Hello, my name is Douglas Bloch. I'm an author and a depression survivor. Welcome to another edition of One-on-One with the Depression Counselor. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the relationship between addiction and depression.
What is the connection between addiction and depression?
In my video, The Body-Mood Connection, I talked about the fact that the quickest way to change your state of mind is to change your physiology. This is why in my healing program I recommend that people exercise, eat well, get a good night's sleep, get massages, take warm baths, etc. because they help one feel more relaxed and more energetic. However, there's even a quicker way to change your physiology than these kind of holistic techniques I was talking about, and that is by doing drugs of abuse. What do these drugs do? They affect a center in the brain having to do with pleasure, and they release a chemical called dopamine, which is the feel-good chemical, and they make you feel high instantly. For example, there are two basic groups of these chemicals. The first is called stimulants. You have cocaine, speed, methamphetamine. They get you up, and you can imagine that a person with depression would be attracted to these drugs. Then there are the downers, the opiates and alcohol, and for some people marijuana. They calm people down, and of course people with anxiety would be likely to use those types of medications, or not medications, but drugs. What's wrong, you might say? Instant results. You feel really good. Unfortunately, they work in the short run, but in the long run there are major problems. And one of the first people that figured this out was Sigmund Freud, who when he first tried cocaine thought it was a miracle drug and wrote a whole paper about how it cured depression, until he found out what Isaac Newton had discovered a century ago, which was what goes up must come down. And he crashed. And that, of course, that's the whole problem with any of these drugs. They're short-acting, they wear off, and then you're worse off than you were before. The second problem is that as you take more and more of these drugs, the brain gets used to them, and you have a phenomenon called dependence or tolerance, in which you need more and more of the chemical to get the same high. This is why that an addict will tell you that they spend the rest of their lives trying to chase that initial high, and it's a futile endeavor. So you've got the fact that they're short-term and they crash, and the second thing is that you get dependent and tolerant of the drugs, and so that's why they're really not good in the long term. Now, I first learned about the idea of self-medication. Self-medication is when a person who's feeling depressed or anxious will turn to a drug to feel better. When I ran a group of 20-somethings about 10 years ago, these people were suffering from depression, from anxiety, from bipolar disorder. And as they told their stories, I learned that they had tried everything from methamphetamine to speed to cocaine to marijuana to alcohol to heroin to Oxycontin, everything you can imagine to try to medicate their symptoms. And when you have people who are both depressed or anxious on the one hand and are taking drugs on the other, you have something called a dual diagnosis or co-occurring disorders. The National Alliance on Mental Illness says that 80% of people who suffer from addiction also suffer from a mood disorder. I think it's closer to 100%.
What can someone do if they're in a low mood and tempted to do drugs?
Well, I understand that situation. I've been there myself, but as tempting as it may be to try the shortcut, my recommendation is to follow the kinds of things I recommend and other clinicians recommend, the long-term strategies that will make you feel better and won't have the negative consequences. Now, here's an example of this. They did a study where a bunch of people suffering from drug addiction and alcoholism were in a treatment center for 6 months. During that time, one group of people was taught, or not taught, but encouraged to engage in aerobic activity, mostly running and jogging. When they came out of the treatment center a year later, they found that people who had exercised while they were in the treatment center were much more likely to stay sober and not relapse than the people who didn't. So, if you're feeling really down, you want to reach for that chemical, for that short-term fix, why not call up a friend or a sponsor? Why not take a jog around the block, or at least a walk around the block? Why not sit down and take a deep breath and try to relax? Or turn on your favorite, music. There are ways that you can use to change your brain chemistry that may be more subtle than drugs and alcohol, but will help you out more in the long run and won't get you into the hell of addiction. Thank you very much for listening to this video. I hope you learned something about addiction and depression and how we have to guard against turning to chemicals of abuse when we're depressed or when we're anxious. There's more about this on my website and in my book, Healing from Depression. And until we meet again, I wish you the best in your healing journey. Thank you.